What's going on, guys? Get here, and today in this video again I will be doing another Battlefield 4 vehicle analysis, this time on the highly requested main battle tanks, or the MBT. And today in this video I'll be just mainly covering the main battle tank's primary weapon, and later in the other videos I will cover the rest of the unlocks and talk to you guys about my loadout. Again, please leave your comments down below to tell me which vehicle you would like me to do next, and hopefully I can help you guys out. And also, I know some of you guys want me to break down the bolt action sniper rifles, and of course I will, but I would just like to break down all the vehicles first because weapons takes a lot longer to master and to understand, and I just want to get my experience with the certain bolt action sniper rifle. So usually in all my vehicle analysis, I break them down into two parts, but this time there'll be many more parts instead of just two, because the main battle tanks has a lot of stats and important information which I would like to talk to you guys about, and I just don't want to leave anything behind. In the next few parts, I will hopefully break down the rest of the unlocks and give you guys my own opinion at the same time. And finally, in the last part in the series, I will talk to you guys about my loadout and hopefully help you guys out in the future to improve while driving the main battle tanks. Anyways, let's first get started. Now, there are three main battle tanks in Battlefield 4. There are of course the American faction's M1 Abrams, the Russian faction's T-90A, and the Chinese faction's Type 99 MBT. They perform more or less the same with very little differences. It's mostly the aesthetics of the tank which makes them different. Just like the other vehicles in Battlefield 4, the main battle tanks gets disabled at 10% health or lower and has a 14-second health regen delay. And all three of these tanks have a top speed of 56 and has 2 passengers, 1 gunner, and 1 driver. Now you guys know what the tanks are in the game. Let's get started by breaking down the 3 main weapons for the battle tanks. So firstly, we have the AP shell, or the armor piercing shell. It is default in the primary weapon section. The AP shell is a 120mm shell that deals high damage to light, medium, and heavy armor. It has a bullet velocity of 200 meters a second, and the magazine size is 1 shell, of course, and it has a total of 5 shells in the magazine capacity, including the 1 shell which is already in the chamber. Each shell takes 3 seconds to reload and 10 seconds to auto replenish. Now let's take a look at the damage model of the AP shells against all the vehicles. Firstly, we'll start off with the main battle tanks. It does 23 maximum to the front, 35 maximum to the side, and 55 maximum to the rear. And all this will only drop down to 21 minimum, so that's not too bad in my opinion. Then the AP shell against the IFVs and the mobile AAs does the same amount of damage at 44 maximum and 24 minimum to the side, rear, and front of the vehicle. So it doesn't matter where you shoot them, you'll still do the same amount of damage. Then the AP shells against the attack boats does 44 maximum and 32 minimum to the side, and 32 maximum and minimum to the front and rear. Against the mobile artillery and the heavy transport trucks, the AP shell does the same amount of damage at 43 maximum and minimum to the side and rear of the vehicle, and 58 maximum and minimum to the front of the vehicle. Against light vehicles, it does 88 damage against jeeps and 65 damage against ripboats. Against aircrafts, it would do 91 damage against the attack helicopter and scout helicopter, but the transport helicopters does 61 damage only. Lastly, we have the one-hit kill list. Now in this list, it includes the quad bike and dirt bikes, the jet skis, and both types of jets. And if you hit one of these vehicles, it will guarantee you to destroy it and maybe even get a kill if they don't ditch the vehicle. Let's move on from the AP shell and let's talk about the HE shell. The HE shell is unlocked at 25,000 points and it stands for high explosive. It is a shaped charge fired from the tank's main cannon. It travels at a slower speed, but it deals heavy damage when used against armored targets. It has a slower bullet velocity at 150 meters per second, a magazine size of 1 shell, and of course 5 shells at its total ammunition. It reloads 4 seconds per shell, and it takes 10 seconds again to auto replenish each shell. Again, let's talk about the damage model of the HE shell. Firstly, again with the main battle tanks, it does 29 damage maximum to the front, 44 maximum to the side, and 67 maximum to the rear, and all this will drop down to 25 minimum. The HE shell against the IFVs and the mobile AAs again does the same amount of damage at 55 maximum and 30 minimum to the side, rear, and front of the vehicle. Against the attack boats, the HE shell does 55 maximum and 41 minimum to the side, 41 maximum and minimum to the front and rear. Just like the AP shell, the HE shell against the mobile artillery and the heavy transport trucks does the same amount of damage at 55 maximum and minimum to the side and rear, and 74 maximum and minimum to the front of the vehicles. Against the rip boats, it does 66 damage, and against the transport helicopters, it does 74 damage. Again, lastly, we'll be taking a look at the one-hit kill list. First, we have the jeeps, dirt and quad bikes, the jet skis, both types of jets, attack and scout helicopter, and all these vehicles are one-hit shot while using the high explosive round. Lastly, we have the Sabot shell unlocked at 64,000 points with the main battle tanks. It is a shell without an explosive payload that travels at a increased velocity compared to the other shell at the same caliber. It has a velocity again of faster at 265 meters per second, a magazine size of 1 shell, and a total ammunition count of 5 shells. It reloads in 3 seconds, and it has a 10-second auto replenish time. The damage model of the Sabot shell is exactly the same as the AP shell, except it does 4 less damage against rip boats. So those were just the basic stats of the 3 main primary weapons for the main battle tanks. Now let's get to the part of the video where you guys all came here for, the part where I will compare each of these weapons to each other and tell you guys which one I think is the best out of all of them. Now, of course, technically each of the different shells has its own strengths and weaknesses, and the AP shell is supposed to be the middle ground between the 2 other shells. Since you only get the AP shell default, you're kind of stuck with it until you unlock something new, but once you do unlock the Sabot shell, I would definitely recommend you to switch to it, because the Sabot shell is basically the AP shell but travels faster and has a smaller blast radius. The stats of the normal AP shell and the stats of the Sabot shell is basically the same, except for the speed, of course, and the blast radius, as I said before. So I still think that there's no point of not switching to the AP shell to the Sabot shell if you're just purely looking at the stats, but it just depends on the person and how they feel about each shell. Then we have the HE shell. Now, just by looking at the stats, you can say, of course, this is the best shell to use because it deals the most amount of damage out of all 3 of them. But the only big downside to the HE shell is the speed and the reload time. There is a 1 second difference of reload time when compared to the other shells at 4 seconds instead of 3 seconds. Plus, it travels 50 meters a second slower at 150. Even though the damage is much higher than the other 2 shells, but the time to kill is very much the same as them. In a way, it quite balances out in my opinion. So what does this all really mean? Now, I think each shell except for maybe the AP shell has its own special ability. It really depends on the situation that you are really in. I personally am running the HE shell constantly because I don't really mind the bullet speed and I like to do a lot of damage. But at the same time, if you want accurate long range fire, I would go for the Sabot shell. Anyways, that wraps it up for this main battle tank primary weapons guide. The rest of the unlocks will be talked about in a new video, so stay tuned to my channel for it. I hope you guys enjoy watching this video. Thank you guys for watching. Please leave a like and a comment down below. I would greatly appreciate it. I will continue to strive for a premium source of Battlefield 4 videos. Peace out, guys.